What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today, I'm excited to have the opportunity to re-invite a guest for an interview, Antonio Tutt over here, Jr., but also known as Crow. Crow, you want to say hi?
What is good? What is good, people?
It's been a minute since we've seen each other. I know him and I were chatting just briefly. That I think the last time was LA, right, for Worlds, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. And
It's
so
been a hot minute.
yeah, and so with Antonio being such a very accomplished player, he's actually been topping over the years, but this past January, he actually got third at Worlds as well. So he not only qualified for Worlds, but he also top third, which is amazing. What deck did you use to top with, if you don't mind me asking?
Luard, then tried and true Luard. All of Georgia was telling me to play Shadow Paladin, so hey, I just took it.
And I think you play Shadow Paladin for the most part, right?
Yes, I've been playing Shadow Paladin since I actually started the game back in 2013, and my very first BCS was in 2014. And the deck that I took that BCS, which was my very first regional ever, I ended up taking Raging Form, which was back in Limit Break era.
Revenger's Raging Form. It's a fan favorite too. That's so cool. That's like 10 years ago too, which is kind of crazy if you think about how long we've been around.
Right. That was 10 years ago.
All right. We're so excited about the game. We're still playing and competing. It's just Vanguard's a really good game overall. And so that's kind of like the consensus of this interview as well. I know with History Collection just releasing in the English and with the complaints about ratios and also kind of like the barriers of getting into premium, what I appreciate about you guys with Kingslayer cards hosting tournaments, you also promote premium, but not only that, you take it a step further where you guys do the no OT rule. And you want to elaborate like a little bit of like what that looks like and also how it's effective your turnouts too for a little bit?
Yes. So I guess first we'll talk about the event in general. So with Kingslayer cards, we do best of 3 formats. So best 2 out of 3 all the way through Swiss. The format may change just for time constraint purposes, but that's been a very positive thing. A lot of people are enjoying the best 2 out of 3, or even if it's just top 8 going into best of 3, players feel more motivated to play. They don't feel like I just got randomly cheesed out, which does segue into the overtrigger. Again, overtrigger does exist in the game. We just have to, deal with it. But what Kingslayer cards have done, right? But what Kingslayer cards have done is that they kind of took it a step further because we want to provide a positive and competitive environment. And I think one of the biggest complaints and issues with players was that overtrigger and premium. Now, it does exist in standard. We just kind of accept that's kind of what they promoted in standard as here to stay. That's fine.
Right.
But in premium, a lot of people's like it kills the competitive viability of tournaments or just events in general.
Right.
And I kind of felt that way too. Still do to this day, but I just kind of deal with it. But with Kingslayer cards, they was like, you know what? They put a poll out at one point. It was like, okay, we did the very first premium they did have overtrigger. A lot of people was like, oh man, the overtrigger, oh god, overtrigger, I don't like the overtrigger. They said, you know what? We want to do an event without overtrigger. And what's funny is that the amount of players that wanted to participate actually went up because nobody felt discouraged. They didn't feel like they got turned off. They didn't feel like they didn't randomly got cheesed out by a player because of the overtrigger. Right. And it's been nothing but just positive vibes all around. And I think the competitive viability of the game shot up tremendously because now you can play the game the way it's intended to be played. Like when I sit there and go, okay, I'm gonna guard this, and it's a no pass, it's an actual no pass. You don't have to worry about, oh god, there's 100 million. There's 100 million, so now I got to overextend. So this sanctitude
PG or take it
or this PG, right? You don't have to worry about just randomly getting cheesed out. You don't have to worry about, okay, I'm making this tremendous play, this comeback, and this is my big push turn, and then all of a sudden, oh, it does OT. I guess that's how the cookie crumbles. So you don't have to worry about any of that. And like I said, the environment has just been very positive as far as like the no OT. I've actually hosted a couple of events myself, Crow's Nest, which is pretty much directly linked to Kingslayer cards conquest tournaments. So you can come to my tournaments and earn your invites to their 2K invitationals and stuff like that. And the last event I hosted was also a no overtrigger as well. And matter of fact, Outer Orange herself, shout out to Outer Orange. Make sure you guys will drop our follow as well, and check out our YouTube. Of course, my boy Jaime, check out his YouTube and Twitter. But Out Orange, for example, she actually made a video about the tournament herself and was saying that she didn't really know how she felt about Overtrigger being gone, but she said after like participating and actually playing in the event, she said she enjoyed it. She said it was a very positive, outcome. I got nothing positive feedback about it, and thank you to her for actually sharing that video to the general public.
Absolutely. And you had a good amount of points, actually. The biggest thing to increase like the competitive viability is that you mentioned you guys do 2 out of 3. Is that correct? I didn't even know that. I thought you guys still did like 1 game around kind of thing. But with best 2 out of 3 and the OT out of the picture, has that extended your round times by chance, or has it been limiting to like 45 minutes or less?
So we've had the way that we do it is we do 45. I think it's either 45 or 55 minutes. I think it's 45 for standard and 55 for premium, if I'm correct.
Gotcha. So you're accounting for both games, potentially a third game kind of thing. Okay,
exactly.
Cool. Yeah, you could barely fit sometimes 1 game in under 30-35 minutes.
And what's funny is that we rarely went into time, to be honest with you.
Really?
We had about 6 rounds of Swiss. Top 8 did split, by the way. So I will say that because the tournament started around 11:30,
in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because we wanted to make sure everybody got registered, they realized good, everybody had their deck log in, and once we already had that said and done, there's only probably 2 or 3 rounds where we kind of went into overtime and extended overtime, where people went into sudden death. But otherwise than that, the tournament ran very smooth. We was in and out by, like I said, for us to start around like 11:30 and be done around like 7. It's really good, to be honest with you, especially with a best of 3 all the way through the tournament through Swiss rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of the old days, to be honest. Right. Especially when you go to like BCS events when they're like 7 to 8 rounds, if not more. And then sometimes over the years, they've done like day 2s just for like Swiss rounds.
Back before in 2017.
Yeah, I did that. Like 10 rounds of Swiss and then into top 8 in all of them, except for the first day. The first day was best out of 1, but the second day, every single game moving forward 2 out of 3. Yeah, so no, that's a really good timing constraint that you are seeing success with it too. Because that's also the complaint about like, if we reintroduce best 2 out of 3, you can go into time, that kind of thing. So
right, and I think realistic. I'm sorry to cut you off. Realistically, I think you can do best 2 out of 3, but like I said before, I do understand constraint purposes. So what you can do is that during Swiss, you can do best of 1, and then in top 8, it's best of 3. Or if you wanted to, you can do semifinals, which is top 4, best of 3 as well. Either one, like if you're just trying to sit there and gauge time, because like I said, back in 2017, 2016, 2014, 2015, top 8 was best of 3 back then.
Yep.
I loved it. Gave the players an opportunity to actually play the game. They didn't randomly get cheesed out. And again, like I said, with no overtrigger, sometimes double crit happens, right? And you feel bad. I get a top 8, get double crit. Well, yes, that's
GG.
it.
Yeah.
Right. With the best 3, you have opportunity to go, okay, cool. I can make a comeback. I can go reverse 2 on my opponent, so on and so forth.
There's so many factors too. You could also like learn more of the deck that you're facing or how your opponent plays because, also like preparation. Sometimes you don't have all the time to prepare, and sometimes like you can learn in the moment kind of thing. And going into game 2, game 3, you can still win it in that point.
Exactly.
Too, which is pretty cool. So overall, it sounds like a very positive experience. I like the story that you gave with Outer Orange. I know she had her doubts at first, like you mentioned, but then after actually trying it for herself and made a video about it, I think that shows like really good things about the whole turnout experience. So with that being said, lastly, with pricing, you guys have a cash pool essentially as your pricing, right?
Correct. So it's a $1,000 cash pool. First place will get $400. Second place is $200. Third and fourth is $100. And 5th through 8th will get $50.
Gotcha. I think that's a good turnout. I think ARG over the years in the past have done similar cash pools with their ARG nationals as well. So I think that's a good incentive for people to also bring their competitive spirit too. Because I know some people are like, well, is that really competitive? And I'm like, well, yeah, when you have cash on the line.
Right. People tend to play a lot harder than they usually do.
Right. It's like, you mean I can win? Like money? But awesome. But that's really cool. Thanks for breaking that down. And I think what I want to shift gears is really the deck that you did. You not only helped host this tournament, but you also participated in it. And then obviously have topped in it. You got top 8, right?
So yes, I actually got. So we top eight did split this specific event because I participated both days, day 1 and day 2. I actually got top 8 in standard and top 8 in premium. But for standard, I ended up 5th in Swiss. I actually have my rounds typed out as well, so I can share that with you. But yes, I ended up taking Steam Maidens with me this go around, the tried and true. I had my doubts at first because I was kind of walking into the event blind because I had zero practice going into history collection because I know a lot of people were sitting
legal
there
now.
Right. A lot of other people were like practicing on like CFA, printing proxies, already 3 crafted decks and stuff like that. I was more so focused in standard because me and my partner were sitting there trying to find out what we're trying to do moving forward as far as like standard goes, because standard is actually becoming a lot more fun like the more and more the game progresses.
I agree with that.
The right lines. Because the deck I was actually testing the most was Omnigruzia, I think is the name way you pronounce it.
Huh.
It's the little cat snake dragon looking thing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So yeah, I've been testing that deck out a lot, and it is very fun. And I've just been trying to cook up a proper deck list for it to make sure ratios and things are right. So I had no time to really prepare for the premium event. And when I realized, I was like, oh, I kind of need to practice, but it's kind of too late. So I walk in and just hope for the best. Literally, we had a dinner Friday night, and I was talking to some of my teammates. I was like, yo, look, I say standard, I can top 8 that. Easy claps. I'm playing with lists, it's fine. I've been practicing a lot of standard anyway, but I said, but premium? Oh, baby, I don't know.
I think that's worth pointing out too, is that for context, this is literally this past weekend that we just had was the release of History Collection. So all the erratas are legal, and the metagame hasn't yet formed, and Japan doesn't really have much premium tournaments to show results enough to like form the metagame. So just like Crow had mentioned, like he was literally going in blind essentially. We have speculation. We can start going into your deck list. So if you want to go over, I guess, your mindset, like why did you pick Steam Maidens going into this unknown format, but also you stuck with maybe the write down version of Steam Maidens versus what we've seen with like Crest Jet with History Collection?
So this is just more so a comfort pick for me because I've been using this deck for quite some time now since it pretty much released and it became competitively viable in premium.
Yep.
And of course, we just got the new ban list. Of course, this card here is going to 1, which I think this deck will still be a tier 1 deck, probably a tier 1.5. But overall, I personally like the ride down because this is my theory. Like before, prepping for this event, I said there's only one thing I can really think of. Will my opponent be able to kill me on their first drive? And then when I said that, I thought about that, I was like, no, they won't, because most of the on-hit strides that they gave us are to set up. They're set up into your next stride, so that way it's a guaranteed kill in a sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the format is. Yeah. And I was like, well, if I go first, or if my opponent goes first, it's fine, because the whole purpose is to give my opponent the opportunity to go into that stride, so that way they won't go into like their bigger stride. Let's say, for example, we're going into, I'm not going to say Spike Brothers. I'm going to use a more relevant deck that actually rides up and uses their stride. Narukami. Prime example. Yeah. Granted, it's like a 50-50 matchup with this deck, but either here nor there. Narukami, why give them a Stunverse or an Exterminate Dragon when I can give you a Zoran where you can just do your unhit? You can buy my cards for me, sure. Help me set up my bonds on. Thank you very much. And then I can sit there and have 2 markers on board, get a clap back. The only thing that hinders that matchup for us, which gave us the advantage, was the fact that when we could ride down, they couldn't G-guard and go into impede. Now they have SS to impede. Now, if they don't draw their heals, then guess what? Kind of sucks to suck. Now you have to hold these attacks. And then, of course, with no overtrigger, I don't have to worry about, oh, well, I got randomly RNG'd and my turner's turned off. So kind of diving into the deck list. Yeah. I end up running one of the Grade 4 Uluru here. At first, I did not run this in my Springfest build because I actually got 3rd in Springfest with this deck, to be honest. Minor changes here and there, but I did this in because I was like, it gives me another Grade 4 to go into my deck. And if you have to ride down, let's say you're out of Time Leapers, you can go into this. Right. As long as you have Interano on board, so blast out the Jet. This goes to drop zone. If you have this in hand, this heal specifically.
The Grade 3, yep.
Right. You are now turned off from being able to get this plus 10k. Well, the auto ability of it because you're already written a Grade 3.
Right.
Now you can ditch this 15k shield here to use this in drop zone, now you have a 25k shield.
You still get the best use out of it. I see.
Right. And let's say you're just playing a ride down game against like Highlander. Well, guess what? Now, if you had to ride into this and you have a heal in hand, you could ditch it, put this in Guardian Circle, 25k shield, and tuck this back to the bottom of your deck, giving you access to another ride down play. For follow up.
Yeah, for follow up.
Right. Of course, 2 Time Leapers kind of standard. I opted for 4 Jet because I said going into the History Collection meta, I think Gridora is the deck to beat because the Dark Base is so potent. Not Gridora herself, but the OG Dark Face, because the fact that
the grade 3.
Yep, the fact that he's able to just rest he has interactions on your turn. The problem with Gridora is that she couldn't interact on your turn. She only interacted on her turn by giving you cradles. Now your opponent can go, okay, you play the card. Do I want to Soul Blast 2 to rest this? Sure. So that makes your Slipstream turns a little bit harder because they have enough soul, they can just pretty much shut down your turn if they play their turn correctly. I opted to bump up Elu up to 4. I originally had her at 3, and I had 1 Karunta in, but I said, no, I'm going to put this back to 4 just because, again, Gridora is the deck to beat this format, in my personal opinion. Some people might cope and say the deck is really bad. No, this deck is really good. It's very solid. Shout out to my teammate Logan and Devlin. Devlin is the scholar. Shout out to you, my homie. Check out his
Devlin
YouTube
Cassidy.
Yes. He recently just moved up from my team, from Team Crow's Nest, to Kingslayer cards as a recent. So this is his first event underneath the Kingslayer banner. He also took Gridora as well, and like I said, that deck is very solid. My teammate Logan was pretty much just teaching him the ways of how the deck should be played. Also, Peter Van Allen is another great player, Worlds player actually too. He went to Worlds as well. Shout out to him as well. He's also on Gridora, so him and Logan talk a lot about the deck. And of course, you know, with me being part of Kingslayer, Logan being part of Kingslayer, we were sitting there talking. I was like, yeah, this deck's kind of dumb. and then they touch Gridora either. She's still at 4. I was like, this deck's
going to be a grind game. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And that's why I opted to run the 4 Jets and the 4 Eagles, just because I don't want to get randomly stuck and I can't ride anything.
You have plenty of grade 3s or even grade 4s that you can ride. So you have the standing Vanguard too. I get you.
4 in Tirana. You're going to run 4 of these until the card gets hit. Going CB1 plus 3 is kind of broken. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh card, actually. So shout out Bushro for making this card. I used to run her. I kind of flip-flop with her. I had her at 3 at one point. Then I ran her at 4 because I was like, I just need to make sure I have my targets for my cats. And just seeing this card, this is your main extender for the deck here. On your Slishman turns, being able to climb up into grade 3, use the grade 3 to climb up into a grade 4, which will be Slishma. And then you can overcall onto that other circle on top of the stride with her. I ran it 2 Nabu. So this way you can have the guard restrict is really nice, being able to turn off heal guards on turn 2. And on top of that, you can, she's another grade 2 that will be in soul. So when you do your ride down with Jet, you'll be and you wanted to Soul Blast out this grade 2 here, you'll be able to do so and still have this in your soul, so this way you can ride it instead.
Yeah, I agree.
The 4 cats obviously have to mandatory. 3 dogs, I wanted to run 4, but I think it's important just to have 3 because you want to run again more Steam Maiden users, this way you can hit off your gear cap. 2 of the grade 1. Now this is where the deck counting gets iffy with some people. I end up running 2 Rolocks. A lot of people's like, oh, well, Hanali got buffed. Why not the new Hanali? I think not the new Hanali because, again, the whole purpose is us to ride down. You kind of want to get some damage here and there. Your opponent's not going to kill you off the bat because you generate so much advantage off the ride down, especially off the time leap return, because you'll go Enterana swing, Soul Blast 1, go +2, or go +1. Time Leaper will tuck the cat. Cat will time leap the cat or tuck back the cat to get the Enterana. Enterana goes CB1, go +3, so you can get your Soul Blast. Soul Blast out the Jet, get your card, Soul Blast out the Jet, and then you can ride like your Nabu or this. So again, you kind of want the damage so that way when you go up into your Slishman turn, you'll be able to get all the multi attacks off. And the rocks is just so good, especially if your opponent's riding up. Sometimes you only really need 5 attacks against your opponent. So that's why I was like, Hanalei was like a hit and miss, and I was sitting there talking to people about the new Hanalei as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people was like, it came in clutch. A lot of people was like, it's mid, it's cool.
It's all over the place, to be honest. Yeah.
Right. So I think the card is in a state where it's a very, very good card, but it's in certain situations where with this specific deck here, especially with me playing Ride Down Jet, which I'll kind of get into a bit more. The reason being why I took this variation over the Crest, is because again, the roster is just so good. It's a PG against a Stride.
It really is. Yep.
So if your opponent rides up, let's say you go second, your opponent rides up, they'll probably get like 5 attacks anyway, 4 or 5 attacks anyway. And let's say you're at 3 damage, you don't want to randomly get cheese, use rollout. PG.
Yeah.
They kind of dive back into the deck. TikTok. The one TikTok is because you have Rafana. This is your target for it.
I've seen people play 2, but I guess it's because you're playing the write down version, right? So then GB may not be always live in those particular scenarios, right?
Yes, actually, I was talking to, and I was looking at Dave Vex's list as well at one point, and he kind of, if I'm not mistaken, he also went down to one TikTok worker. Reason being is because the second TikTok will be this. So you will have this will take the place. So that way you will have the 2 TikTok workers in there. So I cut the TikTok because I also cut the what's her name? Mellum.
Yes.
I cut the Mellum to add in another one of the grade ones because I want to have all my rod targets alive.
Makes sense.
And I hated riding a 7K base. I mean, granted, I could swing under my opponent, but I wanted that to be an extender more so than anything. Yeah. So
makes sense.
So I ran the new crits are broken. I love these things. They're just essentially a draw trigger. So I run 7 draw triggers in the deck. Matter of fact, I will tell you what happened to me in Swiss. So day 2 for the event, I was sitting there going against Norakami. Game 1, I got too old, unfortunately, but game 1 was so close. I could taste victory, but my opponent hit defensive draw trigger into defensive new crit, and he drew 2 cards off my turn. I was like, oh my God. So you got 20K power, so you're 31K base on top of drawing 2 cards on my turn, which I think those 2 cards matter because I think one of them was a card that helped him block my turn all the way through. I was like, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I think that's also the attempt for Bushiroad for helping survive some of this like new history collection stuff too, because like defensively, if you're going second, you get the additional ticket shield from the Messiah Errata.
Right.
And now you got these crits that also give you an extra card. And I've noticed playtesting myself that certain decks do come down to that 1 or 2 card difference, and it does make a difference more than you would expect.
Right.
So the fact that you had to point that out in your matchup, and you're like, wow, if this didn't have happened, I think I would have actually won.
Right.
Cool.
So what's funny is that this will actually be 2 of if this was just if we had OT involved, because one of these would have been OT. So I would have run 2 copies of this. The reason why I will only run 2 copies is because this card here is so vital to the deck because you kind of need the counter charge, and it also ups the bind count in your bind zone, so that way your cats and your elus get more power.
Yep.
Of course, I run 4 draw triggers. I wish I could have ran the Steam Maiden Grade 1 PG. Technically, I could if I cut either TikTok or this here, but I think draws are just so much more important. Drawing cards on your opponent's turn is broken, and a lot of decks don't have guard strict on zeros anymore. Like that. Sanctitude will be cool, but overall, just being able to have a Steam Maiden name, which would have been the grade 1 PG, which I ran in my list for Springfest. It actually came in clutch because I actually had no cards in hand except just the PG, and I was able to block my opponent and draw for turn, get a crackback turn, and win. Nice. I run 2 of the grade 3 heal guards. Again, if you're going second, they're really, really good.
Yep.
3 of the stride for the crit. I actually decided to cut 1 because you have so many ways to stride. You have 3, 7, 11.
You have a lot of cards I can pay for it.
It's just a lot. Then you have the Steam Maiden heals because, again, it's a Steam Maiden name. Being able to search it off with the cat is really, really good. And, of course, like I said, the 2 hogs. Kind of diving into the G zone. This is where I had the hardest time building my deck, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because I had to figure out, okay, what is the meta we're going into, and how can I cater my G zone to fight against the meta. And one of the things like I said, the deck to beat was Gridor, in my personal opinion. And I used to run Ratna Clocks, but I was like, I kind of need to put the Heritage package back in because I actually cut this at one point. So, of course, you got to run this. This card is, the price for this card is ridiculous. I think this card is like $60. But,
as of recording right now, it is around $60.
Sheesh. Yep. I think this card is mandatory, though. Being able to just get the gold +3 off of going second is really, really strong. Yeah. Sometimes it kind of incentivizes if I go second, that's perfectly fine with me because I actually need these extra cards or this extra shield in hand, especially against Nubutama being so potent in today's meta, which that deck is very, very strong too. It's very underrated. You have two quick tickets, the quick shield and the quick ticket. Your opponent's like, well, I can never rename you if you hold enough to those cards because all you're gonna do is just call them and then they just disappear and it's a dead turn. So yeah, having this card in the deck is really, really strong. I ran the one overdress next stage. Card is really, really good. You never actually use it to ride next stage for real. You just use it to flip up so that way you can gear groovy into it. Then I ran 4 Slishmas. At first I had Slishman at 3, but I was like, sometimes you just go into those games where that 4th one comes up. Then of course the 2 Bear Locks. This card is amazing. I was able to set up a turn where I had like triple Elu in the front row, triple Cat in the back row. I was going against Highlander. Shout out to my teammate Connor. That match was crazy, and he went into the Highlander stride that says you can call the ones from your G zone, but they have to have different names or whatever, what have you. And it was all swinging for like 30. And I was at 4 damage. I was like, you know what? I can block his entire turn. I say, as long as he doesn't check like something crazy or ridiculous, so I think I live. So I went bear. He goes, okay, swing 30. I go, cool. Bear lock, bind one of my grade 3 Elus in the front row. All right, this is now 20k shield, makes me 33. A bear lock again. Cool. I can now I can just G guard the other ones or hard guard the other ones and call it a day. Head around. This card comes up a lot, to be honest with you, especially like in the mirror match. Being able to have access to this card in general is just amazing. If you're stuck on Jet, Heritage is for the really long grindy games. And the cool thing about this is that you don't have to be on Chrono Jet to stride into this card. You just have to flip down the Zodiac Time Beast in your G zone. So that way,
that's a good point.
So if you have a proper bind zone set up and you're on her, that means you can start doing your multi attacks with Elu and grade 1 and stuff like that. So you get 2 turns of that.
That's nasty.
I had this I had this at 2 of at one point, but I had to cut it because, like I said, the G zone is very, very tight, especially now since you have to put the Messiah in. Put this on 1 of. It's a really, really good card. Big shield. It's a ZTP mostly. That's what you really care about the most. In fact, this is a Time Beast. The Gear Groovy, of course, this is ZTB. More fodder for Heritage. And this is where my G zone really swapped up. Shout out to Dave Beck again. He was the one that kind of put me onto this. I was watching one of his deck profiles, and he was saying, like, to put this card in. This card came in clutch for me, actually, in one of my matches. When I had next stage my opponent, I was able to call a card out. I already had a Slishman face up in my G zone. I was able to call out a grade 3 from the bind zone, swing with it, so blast 1, call it out. So I got more multi attacks.
Yeah, even in G era, this was paired up with the Gear Groovy back then too, just to get more attacks.
Exactly, Gear Groovy. So how long? Next stage, really good combo. It's a 2 CB turn, but who cares? It's really, really strong.
you also got the boar, so if you see the boar like late game, you can still countercharge and benefit from it.
Exactly. Then the 1 Rafana, and like I said, Rafana pretty much gets you your TikTok worker. And last but not least, this card is amazing. Like, you can't run the G zone without having this card in. Being able to tuck back a trigger and a normal unit to the bottom of your deck is just really, really good. So you can tuck back like your TikTok worker into Rana, so on and so forth. Heck, I see this card going up to 2 copies, especially when Rana get hits to 1 potentially.
Gotcha. Nice.
That's pretty much it for the deck itself. Now, why play the ride down version? Reason being is because, like I said before, in the meta that we're going into, people's first ride aren't going to necessarily kill you per se. They will put you in disadvantage, but the fact that they're not directly like destroying you, and you already gain so much advantage with the time leaper and stuff like that, and your Interanas, you can sit there and go, okay, cool. I have a force marker now. I ride up. I do my actual good stride, which is Slishma. Get a bunch of multi attacks off. shred your hand, if not just outright kill you on that turn.
Yeah.
Because if the new strides don't generate that much advantage, the only thing they really give you like 2 markers, which is still strong nonetheless. Don't get me wrong. I think some of the strides are ridiculous, but some, for the most part, are just like kind of mid, to be honest. It's just more so for setup. And I can even give you a prime example. Shout out to my teammate Kyle Warfield as well. We actually played in Swiss. He actually played a very, very interesting build compared to mine. I wish I actually had his deck log, but neither here nor there. His is Jet without the crest, but he played the actual ride-up version of it. I'm trying to see if I can actually pull it up, but while we're talking. But he rides up, does his turn, and he runs 2 TikTok workers and 2 melons in his build.
Yep.
And he doesn't run the rollouts or anything because it's not necessary, because you're getting 2 markers and doing a bunch of multi attacks.
It sounded like he basically went back to GR time leap with the build.
Pretty much. I'm about to see if I can actually message him now. But yes, he pretty much did for the most part, except he did not run the history maker. That's the only thing he did not run.
Oh, wow. Okay, gotcha.
He still had the Steam Maiden package in the deck.
Oh, I guess because you play that and you have other cards to go time leaping, it works out either way. Okay, I can see that. I gotcha. Yeah, I know back in the day, History Maker with or Watar type of plays, but I think some of those cards are outdated at this point, and Melum and TikTok are pretty much the prevalent ones still at this point too.
Exactly, but he that game was crazy because it was pretty much we pretty much went into like top deck mode. I didn't win the game 2-0. I think the ride-out version is still better after like testing that matchup like for the first time ever. Yeah. Because going into the ride-out version, you kind of put yourself at disadvantage, especially if you don't have like the proper cards to set up. Well, the ride-down version, it kind of fixes a lot of those issues for you. You don't have to rely on like the TikToks or the Melums. You kind of just go hit Time Leaper, tuck a grade 1, get the Antarana, and there you go. You got your board back.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because a lot of the old stuff is still like you gotta have it in the moment, basically. I gotcha. Yeah, I did notice that with some decks too that decide to write up essentially because of the history collection strides. Like you had to have a couple key cards or the proper setup to really pop off, and if you don't, it's super like lackluster too. So with after the tournament, like, did you feel like you reaffirmed some stuff, or did you feel like you can tweak your deck and maybe learn from the event coming this BCS season with this metagame shaping up?
Yes, with the new ban list, obviously there's a lot more I need to test. If it were not for the ban list, I think this list will be ideal for me to walk into the next format with. I'm pretty comfortable with this list. Everything ran pretty smooth. There was no complaints with the deck list at all. Everything kind of ran the way I assumed it would run. So the deck really didn't change too much compared to how it was ran before, outside of just cutting the mellow.
Which is nice, yeah.
And I would really wish during BCS I ran this card, because this would have came in clutch a long time ago. But beggars can't be choosers, so you just live and you learn, and that's what I learned, that this card's broken.
So moving forward, would you agree with the ban list hit, and then also seeing the other jet in action? Do you think that would be probably the most popular build moving forward?
So moving forward, I think the ride-up jet will kind of be ideal. You can still play either or, to be honest with you. Players
even with the Entrada hit? Wow.
Yeah, because the reason being is that the replacement for this here will be Karunta.
I can see that.
And Karunta is, for you all who don't know, is on place, kind of last one, so last one. Choose a card on the board, tuck it to the bottom of the deck, and then search your deck for a grade +1 of that specific card. So you can go tuck back a grade 1 off your opponent's board, off your own board. If you have another CB accessible to you, you can get the Antarana even with it being at 1, and you'll be able to still get that Soul Blast off Soul Blast and not your jet, so that way you can still get your ride down plays.
Yeah.
So there's like so many different avenues. I feel like this specific build has more flexibility compared to the other variation with ride up, because with the ride up you want to run more TikToks, you want to run more Melums, which means you're running bricks if you don't go first. Because going second is cool, but in your mind you thinking, I have to ride jet so I can get 2 markers, otherwise I'm kind of playing from behind. Whereas with this variation here, you have more defensive tools to your disposal.
Yeah, you have a more solid plan going either way, first or second.
Correct.
Totally agree. I think the Karunta is also a card to consider for this format because if people are going to play Hanali, unless they remove it with the new errata skill, that's something that you could easily just like remove from the field.
Right.
If
And
the player doesn't know.
And what's so good about that is that if they remove it off the board, that's fine because you really don't need nothing about 4 or 5 attacks anyway. If you notice your opponent has the Hanali proc, which is actually something I did, was that I set up my game, like the game state, so that way I go for a plus turn. It's like, cool, I might not attack you that many times, but at least my Interanas in my bind zone, my cats in the bind zone, I can call those out and go plus a billion.
You can still generate advantage to survive one more turn.
Exactly.
Before going into the kill turn. I gotcha. So with that being said, like, is there any advice that you would give to players on wanting to top, or maybe you see something that holds players back from topping?
So I think I said this before in a previous video, but the mental game. Like, you have to have a very strong mental for this game. I highly encourage anybody and everybody to, like a close friend or anything, you ever feeling down when you're playing, or you feel like I sagged, I don't like this game, whatever, what have you. Have those friends, surround yourself with positive people in a positive environment. One of my teammates, he got completely sacked out during the premium event, and he still got top 8 though. But I was like, bro, look, pull yourself together. I said, if you died to your opponent getting lucky and it wasn't you, that happens. It's a TCG. At the end of the day, it's an RNG based game. It don't matter what TCG you play, it's RNG based, right?
Right.
And I was like, pull yourself out the slump. You got this. He continued to play in the rest of the rounds, and he got top 8. So just having a strong mental for one thing, trying to minimize the amount of tilt that you have, and of course, practice. Like I said, I kind of walked into this event blind myself, but I used my prior knowledge of the metagame itself, and I started theory crafting like, oh, okay, I can see this interaction here. I can see this interaction there. This might be the deck to beat. This is the deck I need to look out for. That's kind of under the radar. How would this card affect me? Like I said, Hanali being buffed. How would this card affect the way that I play my the games and my turns? So stuff like that. You just start thinking about that type of stuff.
Yep.
Even during mid-match, just think about that type of stuff, because I think a lot of times what players do is that when they're playing the game, they kind of just go card for card. All right, this is my turn here. This is my turn here. They kind of autopilot, where they have to think.
Oh, that's a good point.
Think, I need to segue into something different because this might not kill my opponent, or I need to go for a more plus than a actual, push.
Right,
so like that.
Critical thinking in the moment, essentially.
Exactly.
No, you hit some big points too, and even in your prior interview, you had mentioned like the mental game is big, and it's so many factors, and one of them is tilting, one of them is getting in a rut and then letting it affect your performance, which will cost you top 8. The fact that you were there for your friend is really what got him out of that slump, so he could still achieve top 8 in the middle of the actual tournament too. And because sometimes like people take that baggage and it's just a negative attitude that really hurts them, and they start losing games that they should have won, essentially. Too. So big. And thanks for sharing that. And it's cool that you basically had reset the same thing from last year, so your mindset is still the same. And obviously, as a new format, you still have prior knowledge going into it, and you adapted in the situation, which I think is a skill for people to develop too, that you may not know everything about your opponent's deck, but you can still learn the general patterns, right? And you said it yourself, like if people go right up, do history collection, you're gonna survive, and you assess that, and that's a very high level assessment essentially that applies to a multitude of decks too, which sometimes people don't see that. They see the details of like, oh, in Murakami they have Stunverse, and this other deck like Nightmare Dolls has the write down, and so on, right? So that's bigger thinking, big picture kind of thing, which is good. Awesome. And with the recent assessment of history collection, it may not have been the best release with like supply because of this Harmonix Messiah. Right. A lot of the other cards still are cheap, right? If you go for more of the base rarity stuff, obviously if you want to SP stuff, that's a lot higher.
Right, 2 SPs per case.
Right, and obviously that's for SPs, but for you to play the game itself, like if you needed those cards, you're still able to do that. In your opinion, Crow, would you still advocate for players to try out premium for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. I think premium is a very fun format, especially like I said with no over triggers. I recommend trying it with no over triggers first, just to see if you really like the game. Of course, you're gonna throw the over trigger in there because it's what's in the game. It's not on a ban list or anything like that. Obviously, once the OT's in there, of course, it's a hit and miss with as far as like what can happen on turn by turn. But you want to test without it to see if you're actually ready for the format. Of course, I always recommend people to try standard, then do V premium, which is pretty much baby premium. And then after
I like that. Baby premium. I like that.
It's pretty much just baby premium. And then after that, you adapt because with standard having like Jed and Messiah now, and of course Lord coming out next year, you're gonna end up playing premium anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well give it a shot. It's just standard, but more just on hard mode.
Literally with like Chrono Jet and Messiah in standard, it's the beginning of G era or mid G era essentially.
You know what? New game plus. That's what it is. It's new game plus. You know how you beat a game and then you turn back around, you have to play it again, but to get the extra content, that's what you're doing.
That's awesome. Thank you for advocating that too, because it can be fun. I made a recent video too for people like maybe if you don't want to invest into the physical cards, you could always do proxies. You could always play online. Right. There's so many avenues, but don't let that like hurt you actually trying the format itself. I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to come across as well. Well, just to wrap up, do you have any shout outs that you want to give out, Crow?
Yep. Shout out to Kingstar Cards, of course. That is my sponsor. Shout out to Triple Sleeve as well, which is my previous sponsor. They are hosting another event. Actually, I'm hosting an event, and they're sponsoring that event. It's called Battle of Titans. That will be September 23rd. It will be a 1K tournament as well for standard. And of course, plenty of prize support, top 8 mats, top 16 invites to the 2K Invitational later on throughout the year. So yeah, let's see any other special shout outs. Of course, shout out to you for having me on for this interview. Shout out to Outer Orange for, of course, being really helpful as far as like using her platform to help promote my events and just put positivity within an environment.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Shout out to Logan, Connor, all my teammates on Kingslayer Cards, phenomenal players. They keep me on my toes, make sure I'm good as well as far as like how this metagame goes. Because again, I walked into it blind. They kind of gave me some pointers here and there. So without them, of course, there's no me. So that's pretty
awesome.
much it. And shout out to anybody else that support me. I thank you all so much for being able to help me out, support me, and allow me out to use your platforms.
That's awesome, and thanks for sharing and also like giving your perspective with this whole experience. The players that really seek this stuff will get a lot of value from it too, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see you more from the metagame itself, especially with this upcoming season as well. So I look forward to seeing you in the metagame in this BCS season for 2023, and thanks amigos for watching, and until the next one, see ya, bye.